Ready? Thank you very much for being here today. We are obviously very pleased that hearing yesterday's announcement that there are important developments in the case of Anastasio Hernandez Rojas. As we well remember, Anastasio Hernandez Rojas was a resident of San Diego who in May of 2010 was brutally beaten by Customs and Border Patrol officials in the San Isidro Port of Entry. Over a dozen agents took his life, and since then, the San Diego community, along with communities across the U.S.-Mexico border, have demanded from the Department of Justice that not only the case of Anastasio Hernandez Rojas be clarified, but that also the other incidents along the U.S.-Mexico border are resolved. Unfortunately, we see time and time again that the Border Patrol acts with impunity and with violence. And although we are pleased with today's developments, we know that more needs to be done to make sure that no more families are shattered by violent actions from border agents. Anastasio Hernandez Rojas was beaten, hogtied behind his back, face down on the floor as 12 agents took turns beating him. He then received 5 taser shots and died a few days later in a local hospital. He was buried in San Diego. His family is still here today demanding justice, and we are working hard to make sure that the case of Anastasio is brought to justice, but more importantly, that we take immediate steps to control the U.S. Border Patrol. Today we have Maria Puga, the widow of Anastasio Hernandez Rojas, to say a few words. Do you have a question? Yes.
Would you say and spell your name, please?
Yeah, sorry about that. My name is Cristian Ramirez, C-H-R-I-S-T-I-A-N, Ramirez, R-A-M-I-R-E-Z, and I'm the director of the Southern Border Communities Coalition. And Maria Puga, M-A-R-I-A-P-U-G-A, is Anastasio's widow. Maria.
Gracias, Cristian. Buenos días y gracias a todos por estar aquí.
Good morning and thank you for being here today.
Estamos aquí. Ayer yo me acabo de dar cuenta de que se está investigando. Para nosotros es un muy buen paso y yo le doy gracias al Departamento de Justicia que hoy sí se está investigando este caso porque son 2 años de lucha, de espera.
I learned yesterday that the Department of Justice is taking steps, and I'm very pleased and very thankful to the Department of Justice because it has been 2 long years of struggle, of waiting, and now it seems that there is justice in my case.
Como siempre lo he dicho, lo que estamos pidiendo es justicia, que se aplique la ley a los oficiales que hicieron esto.
As I've always said, all we want is justice, that the law be applied to the officers that committed this incident.
Porque ha sido muy difícil todos estos 2 años para la familia, para mis hijos principalmente, contestar las preguntas que ellos me hacen.
It has been very difficult these last 2 years, especially answering the questions of my youngest children, the questions that they always ask me.
Creo que ellos tienen derecho a saber cuando ya espero el caso se resuelva y se haga justicia para yo tenerles una respuesta a mis hijos y decirle dónde están esas personas las que le hicieron esto a tu papito.
I feel that I have an obligation to answer the questions of my children and tell them once and for all who are the people that did this to their daddy.
Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Bernardo traveled along with his mother. Bernardo is Anastasio's brother. Bernardo traveled with Anastasio's mother, Maria La Luz Rojas, to Washington, D.C. On Mother's Day and met with Department of Justice officials to ensure that the case of Anastasio was not forgotten in the Department of Justice. And Bernardo is here with us today to also share some of his thoughts as a family member and as a resident of San Diego that has been dealing with this case for 2 years now. Bernardo.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Bernardo Hernández, hermano de Anastasio Hernández. Aquí estamos reunidos, la familia y amigos, para continuando buscando justicia por el asesinato de mi hermano.
Good morning, my
Okay.
name is Bernardo Hernandez. I am Anastasio's brother. We are gathered here today as family and friends to continue to seek justice in the case of my brother.
Hace aproximadamente 2 meses fuimos a Washington, al Departamento de Justicia, a entregar firmas de todos los que nos están en apoyo, exigiendo también justicia y apoyo para el caso de Anastasio.
2 years ago, we traveled to Washington. We met with Department of Justice officials. We turned over petitions from folks that signed our petition to them.
Y hablamos con los congresistas y nos dieron unas firmas, 16 de ellos, también exigiendo la justicia y apoyándonos.
We also spoke with members of Congress, and 16 members of Congress gave us their support in seeking justice for the case of my brother.
Y vamos a seguir con este caso hasta que se dé resultado y se haga la justicia. Y esperamos volver a Washington para seguir en esta lucha.
And we are going to continue in this struggle. We are hoping to go back to Washington to continue the struggle. We are not going to stop. We're going to continue the struggle for justice.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bernardo. And as Bernardo mentioned, we are planning a second visit to Washington, D.C. in the next few days to continue to press on members of Congress that although we are very pleased with the developments by the Department of Justice, that more needs to be done to hold this agency accountable. Just this past weekend, there was another deadly incident on the U.S.-Mexico border in the Brownsville-Matamoros border region, and this continues to happen time and time again. We know that we need significant policy changes to hold the Border Patrol accountable, to control the Border Patrol, and Andrea Guerrero, the Executive Director of the Equality Alliance, and the co-chair of the Southern Borders Community Coalition will be heading a delegation to Washington, D.C. Next week. Andrea Guerrero.
Hi, good morning. Andrea, A-N-D-R-E-A, Guerrero, G-U-E-R-R-E-R-O. On Monday, I will be heading to Washington, D.C. with a delegation from the Southern Border Communities Coalition, and we will be there to continue to press for justice in the case of Anastasio and the others who have suffered at the hands of Border Patrol violence. We are also there to escalate our ask. We are there to ask Congress to initiate an agency-wide investigation into Customs and Border Protection, because it is plain to us that there is something rotten throughout the agency. When you have an agency that is permitted to surround a gentleman, prostrate on the ground, hogtied and handcuffed, and beat him while other agents watch, there is something terribly wrong in the agency. When you have the watchers of those watchers continuously and repeatedly charged with corruption, there is something wrong in the agency. We know that there have been 11 individuals who have been killed or seriously injured since 2010. We also know that thousands more have been sexually assaulted, they have been beaten and brutalized, they have been verbally assaulted, they have been denied water and other humanitarian resources. Those things will be the subject of an upcoming PBS expose. This will be the second expose that PBS runs, and that will air on July 20th, next Friday. We are going in advance of that expose to ask Congress to open an agency-wide investigation into Customs and Border Protection, because this agency repeatedly does bad. There are good agents and there are bad agents, but when an agency is not able to or willing to get rid of the bad agents or reprimand them, hold them accountable for their actions, then that is an unaccountable agency. That is an agency that operates with impunity, that it is an agency that puts all of our border communities at risk. We were very pleased after our last trip to Washington, D.C. to get the kinds of results that we're seeing now. We were very concerned about the Anastasio case being stagnant prior to our trip, We were not aware of any active investigation. It seems that following our trip, that Department of Justice is in fact doing its job. They committed to us that they would use all of their resources to investigate this case, and it appears that they are doing just that. So we are grateful for the Department of Justice's action in this case, but we are cautiously optimistic, cautious because we still have far to go. We need to see an indictment, and we need justice to be served in a court of law in order to feel that there's resolution in this case. Although Anastasio's case wasn't the first and it wasn't the last, we need broader reform, and that is exactly why we think that an agency-wide investigation initiated by Congress is what's called for here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Before we take any questions, we have some brief statements from Arturo Carmona, the Executive Director of Presente.org.
Buenos días. My name is Arturo Carmona. I'm the Executive Director of Presente.org. We're a national organization that joined forces with SBCC, the Southern Borders Communities Coalition, a few months back to really call national attention to this most concerning case involving Anastasio Hernandez Rojas. We were pleased to see that through our networks and through the collaborative effort, there was nearly 40,000 petitions that were put forth. We advanced the complaints to at a national level. We got congressional support, and as Andrea mentioned, we're able to secure some meetings in DC. We're pleased with this initial first step in the right direction. It's long overdue. I think it's certainly something very nice to see after nearly 2 years of calling for this investigation, thorough investigation. We knew it wasn't happening, but the fact that they've taken this step is a major step in the right direction. So I won't repeat what was been said, but I think that Presente is certainly waiting to hear the full indictment notification, hopefully in the next few days. We will continue to push forth for justice, and most importantly, we will continue to call on Congress to fully investigate and really regulate the Border Patrol at a national level. So Presente.org, along with other organizations at a national level, will continue to push for broader oversight, for broader regulation of the Border Patrol. Just a few days ago, we saw yet another murder happen in the border region in Texas, and we continue to see this type of systemic problem with the Border Patrol. And collectively with our partners in the border, we will continue to elevate the voices of concern and calling for justice and calling for a more transparent, manageable institution in the Border Patrol. So thank you again for being here, and
thank you very much, Arturo.